Now, if you listen to this show, you know each and every week I talk to interesting people all across the West and I ask them one very simple question, and that is, what would be your perfect, ideal weekend morning? If you want to tell me yours, drop me an email. It's martin.evans1@bbc.co.uk. Well, this week I asked that very question to a man who loves his folk music. This is Ant Miles.
My perfect weekend morning would probably be waking up at a folk festival somewhere. There are some great folk festivals happen across the country, one here in Bristol, of course. So probably being at one of those. We go to Priddy, which is a great place to wake up. If the sun's shining, there's live music happening all day. That's where I'd like to be.
Does that involve some form of camping as well, then, does it?
Some of them do. The Bristol one's not. The Bristol one happens on Park Street in the Folk House and in St George's, but most of them do. So waking up in a tent with the children and the wife, waiting for some great live music to happen, live folk music. Yeah, that's where that would be.
You're a family man then, Ant?
Yes, yeah, married to Laura and two children who are 6 and 4, and I'm supposed to say something nice about them, so I will. They're lovely, they're great. And challenging too.
Are you finding that you're a full-time taxi driver as well, are you?
That certainly happens, yes, and wherever they need to go, I need to take them.
And I suppose as they get older as well and they want to go to clubs and things like that, you're going to be doing more and more and more of it.
I would imagine so, yes. We're making an effort to get them to good music, into folk music, and my eldest already comes along to the folk club, so he's getting the hang of what good music is about, but I've got no doubt that they're going to discover all sorts of different Lady Gaga and all sorts of things like that, so we'll end up taking them to things that I certainly don't want to hear.
Like Jedward, for example.
Jedward, yes, indeed. Not quite my cup of tea, I have to be honest, but each to their own. The wife watches X Factor, and so I watch it by default.
So would you still go along to a concert of music you didn't like, if the children liked it?
I suppose I'd have to, wouldn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah, if they need to be taken. I'm the folkie in the house. My wife a little less so she has a wider taste, and so they are exposed to some of the stuff, particularly in her car, and they come home singing it.
Much to your disdain, I should imagine.
Yeah, sometimes, some of the stuff.
What is it about folk music you love so much, then?
I think it's the honesty of it, the storytelling. Folk music, you know, very often there's things in folk music about farmers and knights and all this sort of stuff, but the stories they tell are still true in life now. So they're telling stories about real life, and I think it's that. It's the honesty. It's the way that the singers very often lay themselves open. They've got a story to tell.
I quite often find that with music today, we're always listening to the tune, but we never really take much notice of the lyrics.
Yeah, I think that's true. But with folk music, then, the opposite, I think, is probably true, that the story and the words are the heart of the song, really.
Have you got a favourite song because of their lyrics?
Josie N. Clark and Ben Walker have just done a version of My Love Is Like a Red, Red Rose, which is a Rabbie Burns poem. And I think that's a beautiful arrangement, really, really, really well done. But there's lots of... to pick one would be almost impossible.
What's the story behind that song, then, particularly?
It's a poem, it's a love poem.
Yeah.
One with a story, perhaps, would be The Seventh Girl by Bella Hardy, which is a story of a man who lures girls to the seaside, essentially, and then throws them in to drown them. It's cheerful stuff, yeah. But the seventh girl gets her comeuppance, so I guess it's girl power in the folk music world.
There are some strange things they write songs about these days, isn't there?
Yes, folk song, there's always a lot of real-life stuff, but stories to tell, yeah. Yeah.
When did you first fall in love with folk music itself, then?
About 2001, 2002, I discovered Kate Rusby, who's particularly well known. I suppose for me, I've always grown up in a musical family. My dad was a music teacher, and so I did the sort of indie rock stuff when I was a teenager, and Blur and Oasis and all that sort of stuff. And I suppose there was always a sense that I knew I loved music, but hadn't quite found hadn't found that type of music that was really me. And I was in HMV at Cribbs Causeway, and they were playing, there was a song on, that Kate Rusby it was, and I had to find out what it was, so I went to the desk and said, who is this that you're playing? Bought the CD there and then, and fell in love with it, and played it over and over again. And from that, I suppose, discovered this huge world that is folk music, and was quite intimidated by it, really, because folk music's a very broad church, ranging from sort of what you would perhaps call acoustic singer-songwriter, right through to the old tunes and, 60s, 70s folk revival. And, of course, way before that, some of these songs are centuries and centuries old. So I was quite daunted by it, but set about exploring it and discovering what it was that I liked, and found that I'd discovered that type of music that really spoke to me.
Well, we'll talk more about your life in the folk world soon, but is there a nice tune we can play for you for a weekend morning?
Yeah, there's a singer-songwriter, folk singer-songwriter based down in Somerset called Ange Hardy. She visited Downend Folk Club, which I'm involved in June, and she's coming again to do Christmas in Downend, the switch on of the lights and things, in November. So my favourite of her songs would probably be The Young Librarian.
Here it is.
There was a young librarian, he had hair of reddest skin, was the brightest white I had seen of yet. And there was the fair young lady, she had a heart of gold, she came through the open door to read her stories old. It was dark and it was cold, it was a winter's evening, it was a given it had been foretold, she would not be leaving. Oh, she would not be leaving. And there in the darkest corner, all dressed in shades of black, a young mother and her daughter silently were sat. The eye of the fair young lady shot fast to meet the pair, but only a book remained, for there was no one there. It was dark and it was cold, it was a winter's evening, it was a given it had been foretold, she would not be leaving. Oh, she would not be leaving. And there sat the fair young lady on a splintered dusty chair, opened the book and read with caution and with care. The air thick with eerie silence clocked in the young girl's throat, and there were the two dark figures holding up a note. It was dark and it was cold, it was a winter's evening, it was a given it had been foretold, she would not be leaving. Oh, she would not be leaving. Watch out for the young librarian, he has air of red, he'll take from you that life you lead with spells of fear and dread. He'll lock you.
I really love that song, The Young Librarian, by Ange Hardy. And Ange has been great to us. She's been really supportive, and she's an avid Twitterer, and on Facebook as well. And she's done a huge amount to support the club since it started earlier this year.
Social media's all the rage at the moment. Are you up to date with it?
It is. I used to be a youth worker, so Facebook and Twitter I keep away from some of the other ones that the youngsters seem to be using now. I'm getting a bit old for all that, but Facebook and Twitter I'm on almost constantly, much to my wife's chagrin.
And you're a proud member of the Downend Folk Club. They're on Twitter, are they, in social media?
Yeah, you can find them on Twitter, at Downend Folk Club, and on Facebook as well. And there's also a website, which is www.downendfolkclub.co.uk.
Wonderful. How did you get involved with the club?
Well, I started it. Earlier this year, I'd been complaining to my wife for a long time, because to get to see the sort of music that I love to see, I had to travel to Nailsea at least, and very often further afield. There are some great folk clubs in the sort of South Gloucestershire, North Bristol area. There's the Salt Cellar at Totterdown, folk around Fish Ponds, the Dragon Folk Club over at Shortwood, and some other great clubs as well. But really, they are sort of sing-arounds or sessions or things like that, and not a huge amount of live professional folk musicians on in the area. So I was complaining to my wife, and being the lady that she is, she eventually got sick of it and said, well, do something about it then. So I decided to, and got together with a group of like-minded people, and we set about putting on monthly concerts in the Downend, South Gloucestershire area. And the first one of those was in April. It's a funny story how it happened, actually, because it was in my mind to start a folk club in that area. And then a friend of mine, who's called Michael Tinker, he's from up north, he got in touch with me to say, we'd really like to do a gig with my folk band in the Bristol area, can you put something on? So I said yes, not really knowing what I was letting myself in for. And so that was in the diary, and then Ange, who you've just heard, got in touch with me as well and said we'd love to do something. So we got her booked in for June. So we had April and June. And then Bella Hardy put out on Facebook, speaking of social media, that she was looking for small venues to complete a tour that she was doing for her 30th birthday and wanted something in May. So I piped up and said we'd love to have her. So we had April, May and June booked in. And I thought, well, if we don't do this now, then we're never doing it. So it's grown from there, really.
From little seeds, great trees grow.
Indeed, and the support from the community around Downend has been phenomenal. We've had some big crowds in. We're currently at Frenchay Village Hall for most of our concerts. And of course we had Bella in May, as I say, who's the reigning UK Folk Singer of the Year. And the place was absolutely packed out. We had over 120 in there. And the atmosphere was electric, it really was.
Who would be the one artist you'd love to get at the club?
Well, we've got some great artists booked in for this year, and indeed all of 2015 is pretty much booked in as well. So we've got, later this year, we've got Jennifer Crook, who's based over in Bath. We've got Jess Vincent, who's from Wiltshire, and we've got Jim Murray in December, on the 19th of December. Tickets for that one are selling incredibly quickly. Of course, he's Bristol-based himself, and indeed is the patron of Downend Folk Club.
Wonderful. But that one special act, if you could get anybody.
The one act that I haven't managed to get that have eluded me so far is Lady Masery, which is a vocal harmony trio, three girls. We've nearly got there and nearly had them booked in, but not quite managed it.
Well, here's to a great future for the club.
Thank you.